This next segment before lunch is all about regenerative agriculture, and I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, who is the founder of a company called NUTIVA. His name is John Roulac, and he'll be speaking to us about regenerative agriculture and healthy soils, which we all know that is going to be a leading solution to drawing down carbon and reversing global warming. So, John?
Good morning. Great to be here at AREI-AREDAY. This is my second time. And is this not an amazing conference or what? Yeah. And let's really really appreciate Chip and Sally and the whole team for producing this. My name is John Roulac. I live in Northern California, and I'm going to talk about one of the subjects that's dear to my heart, regenerative agriculture, which is an elegant solution to climate change. Imagine just, if you will, for a moment, that we're flying through space on a spaceship, and someone came to you and said, the way we're growing our food is impacting our oxygen systems and reducing the ability to produce oxygen. What would you do? Would you hire a consultant? Would you just maybe forget about it? Or would you go and learn about how we're producing the food and change it so we can maintain the oxygen systems? And I want to have that as a metaphor for how we grow our food and what we can do. So a little about, I founded NUTIVA in 1999, started with 500 hemp seed bars, and in 2001, the DEA said that our hemp bars were in the same category as heroin. It's kind of interesting. So they published in the Federal Register. So we ended up suing the federal government in 2001, and in 2004, we were fortunate to win that lawsuit. So now, hemp foods can be sold in the U.S. And we're working to actually be able to grow it completely, and there's a bill in Congress. I encourage you to support that. When you look at this picture here, what do you see? Do you see a field of agricultural activities, or do you see an ocean? My point with this is, in our kind of linear Western siloed approach, sometimes people will think, well, they're just focused only on land. And a lot of environmental groups are focused on the land, but they don't think about the impact of what we do on the land and on the ocean. So we really need to look at it's all interconnected. And this simple concept of regeneration, to revitalize, to restore our ecosystems, offers a very elegant and powerful solution to the climate change issues we face. And one thing I wrote an article a couple years ago to the leading climate groups and basically said that we spend about 99% of our human capital, our investment dollars, and energy focused on reducing emissions. And this is important work, and many of you are involved in that. But we need to also look to put similar amounts of energy and time and our good efforts into what we're going to do with the legacy load of carbon in the atmosphere. Because to me, that's the central issue that we're facing, is how we deal with that. And how we deal with that is going to determine what's going to happen with our weather, our society, and our future of many species. The good news is it's now starting to become a thing. The New York Times a few months ago talked about, can dirt save the earth? If you look, Google searches for soil health is going up at extreme rates. So more people are really doing this. And ironically, the region in the US that's leading regenerative agriculture is Trump country. And they're coming from it not so much a perspective of climate change, but from healthy soils, and they want to sign the back of the check, not the front of the check, to the chemical companies. And there's a whole agrarian movement, and it's creating really good connections between the environmental movement and people in the middle part of the country that maybe weren't always aligned in terms of values. So it's a lot of good stuff going on there. This is an interesting way to look at degenerative agriculture, and that's the model today, using a lot of petrochemicals, destroying our soils. And then in the last couple decades, we moved into sustainable. And the idea is we do less bad. But what good is a system if you sustain something that's already degenerated? You know, is that really the answer that we want? And then a new way to go forward is regenerative, to actually increase the soil capacity, the water-saving ability, and create more vitality in the systems. And looking at two types of ways to grow our food, the degenerative system basically runs on yesterday's solar, petrochemicals. And we know we need to move beyond that. And the other way to look at the regenerative is using today's sunlight, working with plants. And simply just consuming the CO2 through the roots and trees will create more vitality, and we can reduce the carbon. One of the challenges we're facing today is the oceans are starting to accumulate more of the carbon, and the acidification is really impacting. And this is really something that's really hit me personally, to watch the devastation of the oceans. But we have an opportunity to pull that carbon out back into the soils. And this is where we get 50% of our oxygen. And it's really an important issue to deal with. Several of our speakers have been talking about that. Also, regenerative agriculture can really work on biodiversity and really improve that. And these are some basic ideas for regenerative agriculture. Cover crops, not having the soil exposed, and also perennial tree crops, and not tilling the soil. Because when you till the soil can wash away through wind and erosion. I want to talk about a project that's going on in the Midwest here in the plains, and Phyllis and her husband spoke earlier and blessed us with about the buffalo. Buffalo, when they graze, unlike cattle, they don't eat the wildflowers. Buffalo, they wallow on their backs, creating depressions, so when it rains, it creates habitat for amphibians. And so this is really important. And I'm helping a company called Tonka Bar, and it's a Native American Lakota company owned, and they're working to bring back the buffalo. Also, interestingly, the buffalo carry wildflowers in their forehead and spread the biodiversity. So they're really important, can help regenerate sequestering carbon. But there used to be 50 million buffalo, and at one point there's only 500. Now there's 500,000. So the vision is, can we increase the buffalo population? Any idea what plant this is? This is a rice plant. And this is a project in the Philippines that I'm working on. SRI rice is a way to grow rice using much more organic matter, not using any chemicals, has 5 times the root structure. And there's a small group in the Philippines, farmers, about 30 farmers that I met 3 years ago, and they're one of the first rice growers, small farmers that go from the field to the retail shelf. And through our NUTIVA philanthropic support and some of my friends from Dr. Bronner's and Thrive Marketplace, we've been able to raise $50,000, and they're actually changing the rice industry, and their yields are better than chemical rice production. And rice is a bigger crop than corn in the world. So we really want to support this SRI rice initiatives. And they just recently won an award for top 5 social enterprise in the Philippines. This is a really a great project. And if you look at some of the people who've been the pioneers in this environmental thinking, Bucky Fuller is one of my environmental heroes, and a lot of people have learned a lot from him. And a whole system thinking is technology evolved by man as amateurs compared to the elegance of non-humanly contrived regeneration. And so we really have an opportunity to look at more of a systems approach. And one of the examples in talking about biodiversity I wanted to mention is that in Germany, they've been testing fields for the last 30 years with scientists, looking at the level of winged insects. Guess what the population of winged insects has dropped in the last, since the 1980s? Does anybody have an idea in their fields and meadows? 90%. 75. And they say the number one contributor is industrial agricultural chemicals and also a lack of biodiversity. And what eats insects? Birds. So this is not only bees, but it's hummingbirds, butterflies. So, and the good news is, though, we have the ability to end this, what one of my friends calls a war on nature, a war on bugs, and build healthy soils. There's a friend of mine named AREI-AREDAY who has been with NRCS for 34 years, and he works with ranchers and farmers all over the country. If you're really interested in this, he's a great spokesperson for this. He just got a call from somebody, he's now working in Colorado here, 100,000 acres of farmland and ranch land in Colorado and Utah. And they can take people who are using the Monsanto, the chemical fertilizers, and cut those back substantially just in a few years by doing some of the methods in regenerative agriculture. And when we get the healthy soils right, we also get healthy animals, healthy people, and healthy water systems, and we can balance our climate. One of the interesting things that I've learned about, how many people know about the small water cycles? So not too many people. I didn't really know about it much a couple years ago, but through the research there shows that up to 40% of the rainfall doesn't come from the impacts of the ocean, but is from the local region. And the way to impact and increase that rainfall and have it be more balanced and get more water is by increasing the plant matter and the healthy grasslands, forests, and farms. So we literally can help change the weather by sequestering carbon, because carbon is the fuel that runs the food soil web in the soil. And so by literally bringing that organic matter, regenerative agriculture has a whole toolbox. The other thing is, I wanted to let people know is there's a film called Kiss the Ground that Josh Tickell, many of you may know him, he's a filmmaker, made Fuel, and I'm a co-producer, and the film is a 90-minute documentary all about regenerative agriculture and talking about some of these solutions. And we have good news. Leo DiCaprio has agreed to be the executive producer, and it should be out in the next 2 or 3, 4 months, and be available through Netflix. And I think they're going to show the trailer here in a couple of days from now. And for those of you, if you wanted to read one book this year, I'd encourage you to read Drawdown. How many people have read Drawdown? Wow, it's a pretty educated audience. Yeah, and Paul Hawkins, a friend of mine. I know Paul was supposed to be here. And did you know that 15 out of 25 of the top solutions for reversing climate change is land-based? You know, restoring mangroves, pasture grazing, plant-based diets, composting. So there's a lot of good information there. Perhaps I can just take a quick question. I just got a little time, but again, appreciate your time listening to here, and I really encourage you to support. Remember, we vote 3 times a day with food. So make sure you try to buy the best organic you can.
Is there some way to bring the agricultural industry or the ranching industry to recognize the benefits of switching from cows to bison?
Okay, good question. Well, that's part of what we're working with, and it's a big challenge. There's a lot of the cow industry has a lot of advantages right now in terms of subsidies and et cetera. But they're working on that. But cattle done right still can sequester carbon. And there's a gentleman named Gabe Brown, and basically he's producing meat just on solar energy growing grasses and doesn't send it to feed lots at all. But we need to let the cows out of the pens, out of the kind of the Cowschwitz, and into, because it is. We need to let them out. But in areas where we can bring back the buffalo, we need to do that. And Tonka Bar's vision is to bring buffalo to 200,000 acres of native lands. Phyllis and her husband are talking about, they live on Cheyenne River, and so that's something that we need to do, but we need to invest in that and do that. I think, okay, real quick.
How are you measuring soil carbon?
How are you measuring soil carbon? There's different farmers do that. Gabe Brown has doubled his carbon in the last 5 or 6 years, but we need more research into better technologies to be able to do that and put it up in the cloud. That would be really good. All right, thank you for your time.